Comprehensive plans are all about community, and each of your cities has its own character, its own vision, its own direction. AWC developed a series of short videos to help you prepare your GMA update. Each video contains a few key concepts and conversation starters that you can relate to your community. This segment looks at GMA and budget decisions.
As you think about comprehensive planning under the Growth Management Act, there's really a lot of logical tie-ins to the strategic planning and policy setting that's necessary for a good budget process. The GMA really did a nice job of framing the way you think about levels of service, the kinds of services that your community enjoys from the city, and how you provide for those. What's the inventory of existing resources, services, and facilities today? What should it be? What are the gaps, and how do we resolve those gaps? That's what the GMA really kind of frames as an approach for comprehensive planning, and that's really a direct correlation to what you should be thinking about from a policy perspective in the budget. The other question that comes up is, how comprehensive is your comprehensive plan going to be? It's transportation and it's land use planning. Maybe some of the utilities. But there's an opportunity to include some of the other functional area plans that are important in thinking about the city as a whole as well. In fact, in some cases, the comprehensive plan is truly comprehensive. It includes public safety, parks and recreation, and many of the other services that the city provides. If that's the case, that's just a great setting for you to do your policy planning that will lead into a good budget process. So many communities in Washington are looking at preparing for major updates to their comprehensive plans. These updates are timely because the Growth Management Act calls for them in many places in mid-2015. So while you're doing your budget planning for 2014, it's not too early to start thinking about how are you going to do that? Are you going to be able to use in-house staff? Do you have the expertise? Do you have the capacity for that in-house staff to be able to understand what the demands are and allocate the amount of time that's necessary to address those demands? Are you going to use a consultant? And if you use a consultant, that's not a bad approach at all. There's many very good consultants that can help you do a good job of this. You want to think about, well, how much do you need to allocate in terms of the cost that that consultant is going to need to be able to do the job the way that it should be done, so that it really does end up helping your community and not just complying with the requirements of the law. More often the case, a hybrid approach is appropriate. In-house staff is necessary to help the consultants understand the focus areas that are unique to your community, and you want the in-house staff to be able to draw from that consultant some of the expertise they have, so that the plan just doesn't get accomplished and then sort of sit on a shelf. So a combination of consultants and in-house staff is often a really good approach. But again, it's important to begin thinking about how do you provide the resources both to the in-house staff, maybe some training and some of those kinds of things, but also to allocate resources to be able to hire a consultant so that you can do a great job of your next major update on your comprehensive plan, so that it can set the stage for the next major step forward in your community.
As cities get ready to update their comprehensive plans and development regulations, one of the elements they'll be looking at is the capital facilities element. And the statutes lay out pretty clearly some things that you have to do, and most of the city plans I've seen do a pretty good job of accomplishing all those things. You have to do an inventory of what you own, so you know what you've got. You have to take into account what your growth forecasts are and come up with some kind of a metric or a level of service standard so that you can use that with the growth information to predict how many more acres of park or how many more miles of road you're going to need. And you have to come up with projects, and you have to come up with a funding plan. Cities that do all of that have done the minimum, and they've done a good service for their city. But there are important implications, and many of our cities have come to understand this, and they're extending or expanding their research either in the plan document or as a series of parallel studies, looking at things like what is going to happen to my operating budget after the comp plan is adopted. Let's say the comp plan says I need another 10 acres of parks, and we even figure out how to buy those park acres. Once we've bought them and we put the playgrounds and the ball fields on them, they don't take care of themselves. Where are we going to get the employees who are going to take care of the landscaping and the mowing? Where are the other employees going to come who are going to schedule the use of those ball fields? How much do they cost? How are we going to pay for them? These are all impacts, not like impact fees, but they're impacts on a city budget that are very real. And this is an opportunity, in my opinion, it's a necessity for a city to say, as we look at our capital investment, let's make sure that we're going to have the operating budget capacity to sustain those capital costs. Let's start with what a developer does first as they're thinking about whether or not to go forward with a particular project. They're going to do a form of financial analysis that the jargon in the business is a pro forma. It is a set of formulas or spreadsheets or calculations in which the developer puts in their costs. How much is it going to cost me for the land? How about the materials to build this building? How about the labor to construct it? And they're going to be looking at regulatory costs. Is the city government charging me certain things? The developer is also interested in how quickly all this happens because, pardon the trite phrase, but time is money. And the longer you make the developer wait, the more it's costing them in lost opportunity or even in money that's sitting borrowed and they're paying interest on it. And so as the developer is looking at your city and thinking, should I come there or should I go somewhere else, it can actually come back to comprehensive plan tools like impact fees, where if the impact fee is a known number and the applicant doesn't have to do a special study to figure out SEPA impacts, they can plug the known number in their pro forma, and they know how quickly they can get to the table with you and get their permits.
The comp plan process, particularly today, is going to force some discussions that are probably long overdue. One of those sets of discussions is how we provide services to our community. That service model is under more and more stress. I'm sure all of you as elected officials know it's under more and more stress as revenues decline and demands for service or the cost of providing service increases. That reality will force some discussion internally. Part of that discussion is with our citizens. We need to help our citizens understand that this model is probably not sustainable in its current form or will require some changes in order for us to have a livable community. Those are tough discussions. The other tough discussions are for us to look at the services that we're providing and look at different ways of doing that. In some cases, that may mean looking at regional services. In some cases, it may mean we're not going to be providing the same services. But in any case, it is a hard look at the financial realities of the revenues and the expenditures and helping develop the political will to move forward on those things which are most critical to the community's vision.